people think this is like HGTV and they go look at 3 houses and they pick one and then they get the key. This is not like a half an hour TV show where everything just falls perfectly into place. So I think you really have to get back to the skills. If you just think that your job is to open doors, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah, kid, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Handsome Homebuyer Podcast. I'm your host, Charles, aka the Handsome Homebuyer. Obviously, if you have a house that smells like cat pee, actually it doesn't even have to smell like cat pee. If you have a house, it doesn't matter. I found I pigeonholed myself with the cat pee thing, and when I don't talk about cat pee, we buy more houses. 516-777 sold. So you're the most repeated guest in Handsome Homebuyer Podcast history.
Really?
This is your third time. This is the trifecta. And you've done it in the 3 different places that we've had it. So the first time you were the second guest of all time in the roach-infested basement with cockroaches that were literally this big, or whatever they were,
Ew.
when we didn't even have video.
Nope.
Then you were in the old office on Vanderwater, and now you're here.
Now I'm here.
And I
First time I get a chair to sit in. So nice.
And we're coming up in the world.
Wow. Yeah.
We're still, I think we need some of your design influence in here.
I could do a little bit with this.
We need a little, but we're getting there.
Yes.
We're a work in progress.
We need like some little tables.
Yeah, something.
Maybe like a plant.
Yeah, we need
some green.
We need something. Unlike my fashion sense, which is reverting back into the 90s apparently.
The 90s are back. Look at these jeans that I'm wearing.
The 90s are back. All right, so I can't even take credit for these. So the guys came up. Well, I shouldn't say the guys. Sorry, Greg. You're awesome in many ways, but these weren't your questions. So Scott came up with these icebreaker questions that I think are awesome that I think we should lead off with, right?
Okay.
I'm going to start. You've heard a couple of these already, but we're going to do it anyway, right? So we've read that you have a passion for interior design. We want to know what's out, what's in, and what do you hope to see make a comeback in terms of popularity?
This is a tough one. But I think what I'm really loving is seeing all the kitchen cabinets in different colors and bathroom cabinets. I did a navy blue cabinet in my new house, and I like that vibe. I like throwing some color in. People always act like, when I did the gray cabinets 10 years ago, and everyone acted like it was like the craziest thing ever.
That house was sick.
That was a great house.
Damn shame with the tree.
Well, it's someone else's house now, but I do like my new house. But people thought, that this is so crazy. We're doing gray cabinets. Like they thought like this world was going to end. But I like the idea of like having color and having different things and not having everything be like so serious. I'm still very into like more minimal. I don't like a lot of stuff. Like if you have like signs in your house, sorry, like take your signs down. Like no one needs to see like live, laugh, love, in your living room. I'm very into like minimal with like a mid-century modern twist is where I'm going right now.
So I have absolutely no taste when it comes to interior design. If I see something that I like, I'm like, oh, that looks really great, but I couldn't conjure it up, which is why I don't do it, ironically, being a builder. But I have a little itch to do wallpaper lately.
I love wallpaper.
What's your feeling on wallpaper?
I love it. I have wallpaper in 3 rooms in my new house.
As an accent wall or as a total room?
As a total room and 2 bathrooms,
mm-hmm.
and as an accent wall in my dining room.
All right.
Love it.
Beth Lowe approved. We're doing it on the next house. Second question, with countless awards to your name and positions of leadership and responsibility, what goals do you have in your career moving forward? So you've been in the business for 15 years.
15 years.
You've pretty much done anything and everything from lobbying in Albany on behalf of realtors to running the YPN, the best year, I might add. And not just because we're friends. I tell everybody that all the time. Best damn year.
It was the best year.
Ever. It was the end of an era.
It was.
You're in the top, 2, 3, 1% of real estate agents every year.
So I would like to continue with the lobbying and the political stuff because I find that to be very important and something that a lot of people overlook as part of our responsibility. But as far as other leadership things, my goal right now is just to focus on actually selling houses and being slightly less involved in the other aspects of real estate.
It's draining.
it takes a lot out of you, and it can feel very thankless sometimes. And, ultimately, I want to focus on my goals of buying rental properties.
No
And
shit.
yeah, maybe
I
one
know
day
a guy.
I know. It's so weird
about that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like so weird.
If
like,
you need him.
Yeah, you could help me.
Third question. If you had to live in one of the homes you've sold in the last 6 months or so, which would it be and why? And I have a feeling one of those houses is going to pop up right here when you say it, because that's what these guys do.
So it's interesting. I think it would have to be my newest listing that just went under contract, 16 Blue Top in Setauket. So I'm from Setauket, and this has been a very interesting year where a lot of my deals have been centered around Setauket. My childhood home came on the market this year, not still owned by my parents, but I showed that house. I've spent a lot of time in Setauket, and that house is very cool and has a mid-century modern vibe, has the pool, has a great backyard. It's probably one of my favorite listings of my entire career.
What's the address?
16 Blue Top Road, Setauket,
16
New York.
Blue Top Road, Setauket. The questions are going very design here. You talk a lot on social media about feng shui. Do you?
I recently just sold a house to an Asian buyer, and we had to pick that. We literally,
You're good.
where the door was positioned, what way the house faced. It was quite an educational experience for me, and definitely one of the more challenging aspects of my career, because there's barely any houses on the market, and then we had to narrow them down by what way they faced, what way the door faced, where the kitchen was located in the house. I mean, it was definitely a challenge for sure.
I had an Asian buyer back out of a deal that we were supposed to do because they wanted to change the address. And I was like, you can't
it doesn't work
just do that. I don't have that kind of power. So Scott had asked, you talk a lot about on social media about feng shui and turning space into one of wellness. What do you think are the most important things to look into if you're unhappy in your space at home?
I think the first thing that you should do if you're unhappy is declutter and clean everything. I know my mind cannot function in a cluttered space, and I feel like that's the first thing. And then there's bringing plants and greenery into the room and really clearing the energy out, and then putting things back in that you love without overdoing it.
You ask on social media, what is your favorite style of home? Between bungalow, farm ranch, Tudor, contemporary, Mediterranean, what is yours? And yeah, you've lived in actually the last two houses were very different.
Yes, they're very different.
What is your favorite? And actually, I love both of them
they're both different. One was
very
a farm
different
ranch.
ways.
One is like more of a California contemporary. But if I really was going to build a house from the ground up right now, it would be a full on, as they call a $1 million listing, modern, like the square, glass, steel, a true California modern, something that you would see in the Hamptons or on Fire Island, but not in a regular neighborhood like I live in.
Is that the next house?
I would love that to be like that type of style. But by the time I'm ready for the next house, I might be onto something different.
Last question. What's the most common I can do that home DIY project that people should probably have professionals do?
Basically everything, I think. I don't think you should really do things yourself.
I can't freaking hammer a nail or hang up a picture.
I think, whenever you walk into a house and you could tell the homeowner did the renovations themselves, it's pretty obvious. I mean, anything that involves a straight line, molding, painting, wallpaper, I think most things are better left to a professional.
Or just buy a handsome special completely renovated already.
Exactly.
And I can't promise 100% straight lines, but most of them will be straight. So I wanted to have you on because it's a very tumultuous time in real estate. Real estate agents of all ages and all experience levels are freaking out. Literally everywhere I go. I signed a lease the other day, and the agent had been in the business 45 years, and she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So you have a combination of things going on. Typically, and I did this research for this podcast the other day, which typically in Long Island, we sell about 30,000 homes a year, which is wild. I never knew. Did you know that?
No, only because you're telling me.
30,000. Last year was the lowest in, I believe, the last 30 years.
Okay.
It was 23,000,
Okay.
which is still a shit ton of houses, right?
Well, when you think about how many real estate agents we have,
Well,
it's
yeah,
like
that's
less
when it
than
gets a
one
little-
per house.
So yeah, so if we have, yeah, but then you do that. So you're thinking 23,000, like that's a lot. If I'm a realtor, I should be able to make a pretty damn good living selling houses, a lot of houses. But there's 38,000 real estate agents on Long Island. Not a lot of inventory by normal standards. The NAR ruling is coming into effect. There's a lot of general confusion because I think nobody really understands what's going on and is talking about it. People are leaving the industry. People are, trying to do, 1% listings, anything to make money. It is a very cutthroat time in real estate. And I think that people look to you as a resource and someone that is very experienced and a beacon of hope. So I wanted to kind of talk about all those things individually.
Well, I think first and foremost, everyone needs to take a deep breath. Most buyers and sellers use real estate agents and want to use real estate agents. The numbers are like 90-something% of transactions are, done with real estate agents involved. And I don't think that that's going to change because I think if we're confused, the public is even more confused.
Good point.
And I think that if you can explain your value proposition and why you have the skills to get done what the client needs to get done, I really don't see any issue. I've signed listings at a higher commission rate since this whole thing was announced because I was able to explain my value and, how I still see value in offering a compensation to the buyer's agent. And notice I use the word compensation. I did not use the word commission. I think we all need to work on changing our vocabulary a little bit and what we're saying to clients and how we're explaining things to them. And you are going to have to learn how to speak and not just say, sign here, maybe, the first thing I did when the PCSD, whatever form came out, is I went through it and actually did it as if I was doing it for my own house. So I got myself familiar with the form. So I was able to say to my clients when I had to leave the paperwork with them for them to fill out, it's not so scary. Take your time, read through it, answer the questions to the best of your ability. If you don't know, say you don't know. And I think that's, another thing that's real estate agents. If you don't know something and you maybe now, most of the agents that are licensed right now got licensed in the past 4 years, right? So that's kind of a problem because they never really had to learn the skills that someone like me who got licensed in 2009 kept coming into a market that was literally saturated with listings.
Yeah.
There's literally a moment in my career where I had 27 listings. None of them were selling.
Yeah.
And I had to call every single, can you imagine if I had 27 listings right now? I mean, I wouldn't even be able to sit here because my phone would be blowing up. I'd have all the listings in Suffolk County that came out today. So I think you really have to get back to the skills, like the skills that are needed, the presentation skills. What's your listing appointment? How do you do a listing appointment? What do you say on the listing appointment? And even if you have to role play with another agent and practice what your buyer consultation is going to look like. What are you going to say to a buyer to show them the value that you bring? What are the things that you do? If you just think that your job is to open doors, you're probably not going to make it because I don't even put that into the equation of what I do. Yes, I will take you to see the house, but most likely I found the house. Now I'm taking you to see the house. We're walking through the house I always say to my clients, when I finally don't say anything negative about a house, that's the house that you're going to buy. Because when I walk through a house, I'm not like, oh my God, these kitchen cabinets are so nice. I'm like, let's really look at these kitchen cabinets. Are these made well? Where are these from? Where are these I'm almost kind of running through a mini home inspection as we're walking through the house. You're not going to get to the home inspection and be like, oh my God, can you believe the electrical panel is from 1940? No, I've already told you the electrical panel is from 1940, and we're going to have the home inspector look at it. You really have to show the value that you bring versus just going, isn't this house so pretty? Maybe we should put in an offer $100,000 over asking and see if we can get it. To really show your value now.
Yeah, I mean, on the listing side, and I've told you this, and I know a lot of real estate agents, and I'm blessed to work with a lot of real estate agents. But I've told you in the past that you deliver a caliber that's just that I don't really see out there. Like we just recently did that deal.
Should be closed right now.
Yeah, I think
Like
literally I'm
literally
being
right
text from the table right now. It's closing. I mean, you control the situation, and I don't mean that in like a bad negative way. Like that's
I'm
an
controlling,
agent's job.
but that's like that is my job.
But
to
in
be
a
like
good
the
way.
hub of the wheel. Like
That's the thing. Like you put everybody's in their place. You're controlling everything. You're steering the ship. Just sit back, relax, and you're going to get it done. From the showings to the offers to vetting the people to having your own people to picking up the check to running it to communication throughout the entire process. It's really an exceptional, streamlined,
thank you.
business model. It's just you do an amazing job. What I would love to hear, especially, and I know everybody wants to hear because people are racking their brain about this, is when July comes and there's 0% listings, and now if you're going to work with a buyer, because you have a very diverse business, you list a lot of houses and you work with a lot of buyers. And 15 years in, a lot of agents are like, I just want to do listings. But you can't do that. You need a healthy mix.
You do need a healthy mix.
But now you have people that are going to have to sign buyer broker agreements. You're going to have to your point, show your value as to what you're bringing to the table that would entice people to sign a buyer broker agreement with you. What's your value prop? What would you say to people that are thinking about buying that are trying to figure out who the best agent is?
I think the best way for me when I want to show my value to someone is I do it through telling stories. I tell stories about different transactions and different deals and different things that have come up along the way, because I think people think this is like HGTV and they go look at 3 houses and they pick one and then they get the key. Like that's adorable, but this is not like a half an hour TV show where everything just falls perfectly into place.
Yes.
So I always, I like to tell stories. Oh, you don't want to get a survey? Well, one time I bought a house and I didn't get a survey, and then a tree fell in my pool, and turns out that was my tree. And had my lawyer encouraged me to get a survey, I would have been able to cut that tree down long before it fell into my pool. That actually did happen. And considering that lawyer is disbarred, in jail,
all right,
indicted.
Got it.
That's why we use ASAP German.
Got it.
But yeah, I think, so I just also want to clear something up. Just because there's going to be no compensation offered on MLS does not mean there's going to be no compensation offered, period.
Explain that.
So my position is, and I think it's also my company's position and a lot of other people's position, that when I sign a listing, nothing's changing for me. I'm still going to sign it at the percentage that I normally sign it at. And I'm going to explain to my seller why I think we should still offer compensation to a buyer's agent. And there's there's different reasons why. First, obviously you'll cast a wider net. The buyer is the one bringing the money anyway. Are we really going to lower the price of the house because you're paying less commission? Obviously, no. Like if the house was $500,000 and you're only going to pay, let's say, 2% commission to me instead of 4%, are we going to actually list your house for $490,000? No, that's not going to happen. And I've had these conversations with sellers, and they really they do understand. It just will make the transaction smoother. But the problem is we just can't put it on MLS. So there's going to be a lot more talking. There's going to be a lot more conversations. Maybe your seller, doesn't want to compensate to X%. Maybe they only want to compensate Y%. So there's just it's just really going backwards to like the 1980s in the real estate market right now. But I think we'll adjust and we'll figure it out and we'll find a way. But it just because compensation is going off MLS does not mean that there's going to be no compensation out there in the marketplace. The system still works. This whole thing makes no sense.
None.
Other than it being a ginormous money grab for class action attorneys.
Yes.
The system was not broken, especially in New York. We always disclosed everything here. Obviously, you've signed multiple listing agreements in your life. It's very spelled out. It's very clear. It was never mandatory to pay anybody. You could also sell your house on your own. You could also buy your house on your own. No one was ever forced to do anything. There's plenty of people out there that'll take a 1% listing. I always say, you get what you pay for.
Always.
So, I think the model does work, and I think we'll find a way to still make it work because this is the best way for the consumers, really, honest and truly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand. You and I have kicked around some conspiracy theories that we're still kicking around, but ultimately, there's a lot of people out there that feel that in years to come, maybe the real estate agent will become extinct, will become a thing of the past, and people will do everything online. I personally don't think so.
I don't think
I think
so
it's
either.
way too confusing of a process to buy a house, even if it's your third house. You need somebody, albeit they have to be someone that knows what they're doing, really kind of guiding you through the process.
Absolutely.
And real estate is such a relationship-driven industry. And as human beings, we like kind of crave that. I don't think real estate agents will ever disappear.
I agree.
Especially, I mean, on the higher end, those people want to be catered to. And on the lower end, like typically when you're starting to get into more complicated FHA type deals and sales concessions and all that, those people are not figuring that out on their own. They're not.
And most sellers don't want to talk to buyers. They want that person in between. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Talking about, these are people's largest transactions that they're ever going to do in their lives, whether they're buying or selling. And you need professional advice. And and buyers still need representation. Like Chris made a great example in our office meeting today. If you were getting divorced, would you use your husband's divorce attorney or would you get your own?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you'd get your own. Like everyone should be represented. The system was working fine. Somebody decided that we were making too much money, which is so far from, I'm sure there's TV shows out there, make it look a certain way, but the average realtor makes like $50,000 a year. So
and when you break it down by the hour,
oh my God,
it's shockingly low.
When they were like throwing around paying us hourly, I was like, people could not even afford to pay me. Like could not even afford what I'm getting paid and and the amount of work that I'm actually doing most of the time. It does not even correlate. Like it's insanity. If I was a lawyer taking $1,000 an hour retainer, I would probably still be losing money for the amount of time and effort that I put in on, any one deal.
So, what do you think should be agents' pitch when they're working with the seller? Like, are you going to recommend people show them properties and then try to engage in the buyer broker? Is that something that should come right from the jump? How do you think that should flow? Because I think that's people's biggest confusion now. Two parts. A, like, how do I figure out if I'm getting paid or what I'm getting paid? And then B, how do I get people comfortable with signing something?
So I think if you work with a lot of buyers, you're going to have to get comfortable with having that conversation upfront, having a consultation in your office with the buyer. And, sometimes I do that. A lot of what I do is referral, so it's a little bit different. But I had a buyer last year who I had met out in Babylon, and her husband wanted to meet me. So we did like an old school buyer consultation appointment in the office. And honestly, it was great. We got to know each other. I got to ask, are you pre-approved? They told me they were using a certain bank. I said, I think you would be more comfortable with a local lender. We were able to have like a nice conversation, talk about what they were really looking for. And then I sent them the properties. And then, the next day we went out to look. So I think we have to get back into like really treating this like a true skill-based profession and not getting a call and running, which I think has been the demise of a lot of what real estate agents are thought of and what they do. We're thought of people who are just sitting around waiting for you to call, we just open the door. I think you have to really get back into explaining. Finding the house is the easiest part. Getting you actually into the house and closed on the house that's where the real skill comes in the negotiation, in the appraisal. I very rarely in the last 4 years, I can count on 3 fingers the amount of times that I had a house not appraised out of all of the houses I've sold during these crazy bidding wars. And that's because I have a systematic way that I do my appraisals and what I do and how I present the information to the appraiser. Are you showing up to the appraisal? Are you showing up to the inspection? Are you doing all of these things? Because I can tell you 90% of the buyer's agents out there are not.
Yeah.
Because I'm mainly a listing agent, and somehow I get left doing every single task that the buyer's agent should be doing. So I think those days are behind us. I think you're going to really need to show your value, and as you should, because when I show up to the appraisal, I have a stack of comps and I have notes written on each comp. I go out and I look up square footage for the appraiser if it's not on the listing, and my listing's appraised and my buyer's house is appraised because I put that extra step in. I'll go to the town. I'll find out if we're missing a CO. I'll go through all of those processes. You really have to show the buyer that it's not what it is on TV and that you're really going to be there for them. I think also in the last 4 or 5 years, we got away, not me personally, but a lot of the industry has gotten away from being empathy driven and became ego driven. I sold this house for $100,000 over asking. I sold this house in one day.
Because it was also
I'm the
it was
greatest.
easy.
Of course, it was easy.
It was easy.
You underpriced it by $100,000, so of course you sold it for $100,000 over asking. But we have to get back into the empathy of it, the being there. Not every transaction is a happy transaction. A lot of what I do is not a happy transaction. So if I was running around going, I sold your house, and bragging, having fake turf wars, doing all these things that I'm seeing going on right now, you're going to drive people away, and it's not going to work. It might be working now, but it's not going to work in a year from now. A lot of what I do is death, divorce, change in life situation, or someone needs to go into an assisted living or into a nursing home, something like that. And those transactions have a lot more empathy that you need to have. You can't rush an older person out of their house. You have to really, you don't want to scare them. You have to really listen and be there and not make it all about you, and really get back to making it, what does the client need? Not every client needs the same thing. Not every buyer needs the same thing. Treating someone like you as a buyer versus someone who's never bought a house before, two very different conversations. And I would certainly not talk to a first-time home buyer the same way me and you would have a conversation about a house. You have to really learn to understand your audience and not keep it the same for everybody.
Yeah, I think sales people in real estate, it's funny because as you're talking, there's a couple things that are popping up in mind. We talk about technology, like the platforms like Zillow, et cetera, which I think have kind of hindered the industry in a way because it's become so instant gratification. I pull it up online. I want to know, I want to be in there, versus you can't really rush a sales process. So I was trained as a classically trained salesman 25 years ago from a guy that sold Electrolux vacuum cleaners door to door in the 70s. And there's a process. What you spelled out before is the process. You sit down with a potential buyer, you have a consult, you discuss and you guide them. Hey, what are you looking for? What are the things that are most important to you? I think maybe we should look in these towns versus those towns based on your needs, et cetera. Right? That's what sales is, as opposed to, hey, I saw this on Zillow. I'm picking up a Zillow call. Let me just open the door for you and pray that you buy this thing.
Right. That's not what I do.
It's not sales really. It's order taking.
It's being an order taker. So yeah. There's a big difference between being an order taker and actually being a skilled real estate agent. Big difference. So
there's a lot of agents that aren't really doing any business. There's a lot of investors that aren't doing any business, but the people that do business are doing even more business than ever. My question for you is kind of how, and you have consistently maintained, an upward trajectory of business for your entire career for the last 15 years. It doesn't matter if the market's super hot, you're doing more business. If the market is scary, you're doing more business. What is your advice to agents? How is it that you've been able to maintain that amount of business? And you're not into the new marketing and tech kind of platforms. You're hand to hand, getting it done in the street, relationships. Your phone rings constantly with people that only want to deal with you. How long did it take for that to develop? And then how did you go about doing that?
Well, it developed very quickly because the market that I started in was really a market where it was empathy driven. Everyone was in the worst financial position they'd ever been in their life. They were either underwater on their house, getting divorced.
Well, actually, let me ask you one quick thing. What inspires you to become a real estate agent in the worst real estate market in history?
Well,
for all intents and purposes, right? It's 2009. The world has melted down. It's the bottom of the market, the actual bottom of the market, or approaching the bottom of the market. Nobody can sell a house for shit. And you're like, I'm going to be a real estate agent.
Some of the most successful people started in that market.
It makes sense, but
you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that it's the worst market. You don't know because you never had anything to compare it to.
I guess.
So I didn't know. I I always wanted to be a real estate agent. My father owned a real estate company when I was younger. It was just in my blood. It was what I wanted to do. It was what I was passionate about. And I really had nothing else. Like it was like make it or break it for me. I had nothing left to lose. I had just gotten out of a tumultuous, horrible marriage. I had negative 200 and something thousand dollars to my name. It was either this or get back behind the bar and be a bartender. Like there was nothing for me. I was 31, 32 years old. And I was kind of just said like, F it. If I can do this, why can't I do this? So all these other people are doing it. And I just did it. I sold a house my first weekend. It was disgusting. I sold a house my first weekend. And then it actually took me 3 months to sell my second house. And most people probably would have quit. But then once I sold my second house, third house, fourth house, and then my first real year in the business, I sold 27 houses.
What was the strategy there? Because again, very different market, right? I don't think anybody who's working today, unless they were around, can relate to basically inverse of what we have right now, which is not enough buyers and a ton of product.
So, I mean, I had buyers. There were definitely people who were buying, and there were so many options. Like I used to show like 30, 40 houses in a weekend, starting Friday night to like Sunday night. Every buyer saw like somewhere between 5 and 7 houses. And I would just go from buyer to buyer. And, you would write offers and you'd write offers for under asking and like they would get accepted. Like it was actually so much easier. Like take me back to 2011, 2012. Like I'd clean up. I would literally sell every house.
So what is your advice or your recommendation to agents that are not doing a lot of business or coming into this type of market?
So what I think a lot of agents don't do that I do very well is I play the long game and I play the short game. So just because someone's not ready to sell today doesn't mean that I forget about them. I keep in touch with them very non-aggressively. Like that Blue Top house is a classic example. He called me in August to list the house. I got my whole presentation book together. I was ready to go. Morning of the appointment, he cancels. His whatever work thing, whatever was happening fell through. Okay, no problem. But I added him to my mailing list of my postcard campaign and I mailed him the presentation book and just said, I know you're working on making decisions. I thought you should at least have the information with a handwritten note, popped it in the mail, sent it to him. Kept him on my mailing list. Another couple of months go by.
How often do you mail them?
I mail out a postcard that I design and pick out once a month to my sphere.
Got it.
Every month. I used to do a newsletter, but I decided, after 7-8 years, I decided to mix it up. So he called me again, and he ended up canceling the appointment. I didn't get mad. I just kept him on my mailing list. No problem. I'm ready when you're ready. In March, he called me and he said, "We're doing it for real. We're actually moving." But
did he actually do it for real?
Yeah, we're in contract.
That's that one. Okay.
Okay. So, but in August, he was interviewing 3 agents. And by the time we got to March, there was nobody but me. They had made the decision to sign with me because I had very nicely kept in touch with them.
Yep.
Didn't, just was there, just popped them on my, if we have one conversation, I'm popping you on my postcard list. I'm keeping you're going to see my face every month until you tell me to go fuck myself.
Either sell or die.
Sell your house. So I think you got to play that long game. Like not everybody is going to be ready the day that they first call you or the day that they initiate. And I think a lot of people forget about those people. Those other 2 agents, like he was interviewing 3 agents last August. And obviously the other 2 did absolutely nothing to stay in touch with him.
On top of sending the postcard every month, do you text them? Like, how do you manage that process? Because at this point, you meet a lot of people. Like you're a very social person. You're out. You're constantly meeting people. You meet somebody. They want to buy a house. They're not ready today. Postcard. But like, what are your other touch points and how do you manage them?
I'll check in with people. Like I write a to-do. Like I write a list. Like I have a list of like everybody. Like I have an Excel spreadsheet and I have another list. And even if you're a buyer and you're not ready, I still have you in my search list and kind of like send you stuff here and there and just keep in touch very organically. It's more for listings that I do the postcards.
Yeah.
And just to, in the beginning of the year, I'll send out, a CMA to everybody, market report. I try and, send things that are important that could be helpful to them. And, I always try and keep it like very real estate related, but you have to always be building that pipeline of people. It can't just be the people who want to, work with you today. You have to always be building the pipeline for the future. And I think a lot of people don't do that. And a lot of people don't stay in touch with their past clients, which I also do a very good job of that. A lot of my business comes from either referral from my past clients or my actual past clients. Like I have 2 listings under contract right now. They're deal number 4 and 5 for the same buyer in the past 4 or 5 years, where he sold that house, bought another house. Now he's selling that house and buying another house. You know how much business is out there if you don't that you'll lose if you don't stay in touch with those people. Like those people also get a postcard from me every month. They get an anniversary card on their home anniversary. Now I'm doing it with a lotto ticket. P.S. Let me know if you win. They get a Christmas card with me and my little dog on it. You have to, but if you're not staying in touch with these people, they're going to be on to the next when, those 2 deals, which is like almost $2 million. Literally, he called me on a Friday and said, "What do you think my house is worth?" And I was like, ha ha ha, a lot of money. And then he's like, "I'm thinking about selling it. I think I want to move back to, Setauket." All right, cool. The next day I was out looking at houses. We were lining up pictures for his house. That's short game, but a short game that came out of the long game. Like that was not on my radar for this year at all. That was not a transaction that I had in my pipeline. But you have to be ready for those types of things, but you also have to lay the groundwork for it by staying in touch with people, making it so people want to call you and want to work with you again.
Agents,
it's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science. The easy days are over. Don't worry about the NAR thing. It's all going to shake out. It's going to be fine. But the bad news is there's no more free rides. You're going to have to work. If you have a house that smells like Cappy or not, I want to buy it. Beth Lowe, the queen of Long Island real estate, thank you so much for coming down. Greatly appreciate you as always, as a professional, as a colleague, as a friend. Please put your information out there for people who are looking to either buy or sell on Long Island.
You can find me on Facebook, Beth Lowe. You can find me on Instagram at Realtor Beth Lowe, or you can just call me 516-316-8335.
That's a wrap.